Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters and friends. Welcome to the GDM vlog. It's not the show, but we're going to be doing a vlog where we discuss what's happening during the week, what atheists are doing online, how they're responding to our shows and so on.
Not just atheists, but other people
generally as well.
People who espouse different worldviews.
Yeah, everything. And what better time than now? Because we made a response to Essence of Thought, an online atheist channel run by, I believe, Thurston. And the reason we did the response on the GDM show was because we wanted to highlight that there are certain atheist channels out there who are basically misrepresenting what we do, what we say, our arguments, and they're not worth watching, basically, right? And this is what we wanted to get across. And what
this doesn't mean, by the way, don't listen to the arguments, because we are for free thinking and understanding the arguments, but we want to basically allow people to be guided to understand that sometimes people deliberately misrepresent, they use some kind of clever language, and that can baffle someone sometimes.
And it's those type of channels you don't be wasting time with.
Yes, so what we want to do with this response was to show that, look, there are certain atheist channels, atheist apologists, whatever you want to call them, that misrepresent. And we wanted to use Essence of Thought as an example of these gross misrepresentations.
And we did a response. You guys can see the videos, they're all up there. And Peter made a response to the response. And he basically ended up doing the exact thing you were telling him not to do, basically, in the video.
Yes, I mean, I just don't get it. Yeah. I mean, I have young children, and sometimes when you tell your child, don't do it, and that, yes, Baba, I won't do it, then after 5 minutes they do it again. And because they're a child, you're patient. And you just remind them nicely. And then again, they forget.
So what is he doing? Let's just address that.
I mean, I don't want to be rude, but it's almost childlike. He's misrepresented our points once again.
Yeah.
A key point of our response was what, bro? We basically said, look, Peter, email us, contact us, so we have a frank, nuanced discussion about our assumptions and our philosophy and our premises, so you understand them before you produce a response and a misrepresentation in a video format.
However, here's the fact. I cannot misrepresent you in my videos. Why? I display 100% of your footage, typically in chronological order. This is the first time, in fact, that I have broken this rule, because I needed to deal with a specific point made in the middle of your video, i.e. the reference list you gave. Meanwhile, I never personally state your arguments, but rather I let you do it for yourselves. Ergo, you represent yourselves in full. To misrepresent you, I'd either need to have actively edited what you said or stated what you have said myself in an altered version. Now, I could miss something, I could ignore parts or play an outright lie, even though I just played the clip, but I could not misrepresent you. That is a fact. I can only go by what you state. If you are incapable of getting your own position across in your videos, then that is an issue with your ability. Now, we all make mistakes, but I have made no less than 14 response videos to you. If in every one of those 14 responses, which I have always displayed 100% of your footage in, you have still failed to get your point across to the viewer, then I suggest looking for a new job. As for being childish, for taking what you publish, i.e. something you prepared for, you recorded, you edited and reviewed post-production and then chose to upload as your position on the matter, how? I would argue that a live conversation would be more open to mistakes than a self-edited piece that has been published, at least in my experience. The fact is that your work should not require me to contact you and ask further questions on every single thing you say. Why? Your videos are intended to educate people, correct? Do you demand that your supporters contact you prior to using your arguments? No? Well, if information is missing for me to discuss your position upon, it is still missing for them. Yet you only demand critics to first go through you, displaying this as a dishonest request. You hold to two different standards for your supporters and those critiquing you, displaying this as a poor attempt to stifle said critique.
What he does on his response to our response is the following.
Oh really, Hamza? Then could you possibly explain why I have contacted you repeatedly over Twitter, and before you pretend that you did not receive my notifications or it got lost, as that does happen time to time, why you then followed me back? I did not follow you. I posted a comment, you followed me back. This was over 2 months ago, but before then I've always posted my video responses on the videos I've responded to on YouTube via the comments. I've never hidden them from you, but rather actively brought them to your attention. I even attempted to do this on Facebook. I also took this to the degree, in fact, that I attended one of your public talks and did just that. I noted my critiques to your videos, so you really have no excuse. If you want to talk about who is defaming whose character, why don't we consider what you are actively lying about here? YouTube is my playing field, and every time I've responded, I've always linked there. That's because that's a sensible thing to do, yet I've also attempted on Facebook, I've attempted on Twitter. Nothing.
So as you can see, he's claimed, I've contacted you on Twitter, on social media, I have this duty, and I provide you with all of my video responses. Yes. But you've missed the point, Peter.
We're not saying he's not responding.
Of course he's responding.
You are responding, Peter, but what we're saying is something totally different.
Yes,
right?
And it was implied explicitly in what we said in our response, which was, what's conducive to dialogue and discussion is that you basically ask us questions about our premises and arguments before you make the response. You can't now claim, I've contacted you, therefore I'm in discussion with you because I've sent you my video response. But that's the point here. We don't want you to send us your video response because it's full of misrepresentations. We want you not to misrepresent. Ask us questions, have a dialogue about our assumptions and our discussions and our premises, then do a response. We don't have a problem.
This is a fact that I did indeed address in part in my second video at 32 minutes in, as well as my one to Imran Hussein after he cried about said specific aspect. This is even though videos are still dialogue whether or not you wish to admit it. This differs little from a letter between two individuals in disagreement, except the stakes are higher with it being public. Why is a video by me any worse than a comment by me? Well, for one, you can't control who sees it. You do not have to put any extra effort into my video. Meanwhile, a video can contain viewable evidence of what you have stated specifically and how I take an issue with it in an accessible fashion. Why not respond to it as you would a first comment or email? My response is to your video, ergo it is a video response. Does not mean that we cannot discuss it further in the comments afterward, something you've never attempted but I have. Just because you declare video responses not dialogue does not make it so. Now the only possible reason I could actually think of as to why you would say so is that it is public. To me, this is a benefit. Being public, others can see what you have stated, how you have actively twisted reality and in many ways lied. To you, that is not so good now, is it? But now you have wasted 3 videos aimed at me without utilizing any of my arguments or original footage. This is the first and it's not going so well, as still the mockery draws out in how I have, without fail, always ensured that you had the opportunity to point out my mistakes or misrepresentations. How would this differ to a comment? On top of this, I have previously noted that not all of my messages were video responses, particularly noting the direct message sent on Facebook, which was simply asking LDM to defend their Misrepresentation of Justin L. Barrett. I did then link a video by Wildwood Claire a good 10 days later when you had failed to respond to my message. Also, one of the messages on Twitter did contain a specific question designed to enact a response from Hamza, yet failed to do so. Therefore, even if you exclude my videos, your claim was falsified as I displayed these comments in my first video. What is more is that you yourself have never conducted such behavior towards me or anyone else you have discussed in your videos. For example, Dr. Arif Ahmed. Now, whilst I always show 100% of the footage I am responding to, for you that is a rarity. So if you have concerns on me misrepresenting you, maybe you need to do some self-reflection. Now, I like to think,
and we hope our work will speak for itself,
but if this is true,
that you don't take them seriously. You only take people seriously if they ask and they intend to learn.
Then it is also true for you. Why should I take you seriously if you have failed to come and ask questions on my position? Obviously, this means
if you don't ask and learn, you're going to stay in a state of ignorance.
That is, unless you hold another double standard for yourselves. Live by your own demands before making them of others. You have, to date, still failed to display how I have misrepresented your position on fine-tuning. All you have done is reassert your claims that your version of fine-tuning is not mathematical, yet I never claimed you believed otherwise. In fact, this was the very core of my response in displaying how what you termed as epistemic probability is still reliant upon mathematical probability. I displayed that. I argued you were wrong. I did not just assert that your argument was mathematical by definition, but rather I displayed how your arguments failed to save you from them.
And that's why in the initial response we did was exposing the fact that he thought that our conception of fine-tuning was a statistical one or a mathematical one, because he said Hamza lied. Stop lying. Hamza lied because he's using epistemic probability as a veil to hide the mathematical probability of the fine-tuning of the constants of laws in the universe. But no, he's wrong, because that's an assumption that he should have clarified, but he didn't. And the assumption is that our conception of fine-tuning is based upon statistical or mathematical conceptions, which is not. And we exposed that clearly in our response.
You did a very good job, I think, of clearing out what we were saying.
No, you did not. You actually failed to address that argument entirely. You attacked a false position, a single thread of my meta-argument, but beyond that you simply cried about how I was slandering you, and I displayed this in my response with evidence. When you make the claim that life could not have existed in a universe with any other set of constants, or that non-life permitting universes are able to exist or even likely to exist, you have made an assertion on mathematical probability. You have made the assertion that out of all the ways that the universe could have existed, only this one way permits life. There are two parts here to look at. The first half is a mathematical claim on how a universe can form. This gives us questions on whether a universe can form to be non-life permitting. Is that likely? Or is a life-supporting universe a mechanical necessity? These all add up into giving us half of our probability, which I will refer to X as we do not know the answer, and you did not even assert this in your video. Then the second half raises questions as to how life may thrive and even what is life. You argue this only to be possible in this one set of constants, ergo 1 out of X. I still state X as even though you likely believe it to be a high number, you never discuss the number of ways a universe could form, therefore I will not assert for you. Now, in reality, this one is y, as we do not know how life would exist in other universes. Ergo, the current probability is y in x, i.e., the probability of life-permitting universes existing is y in x. The moment you state that life could not exist in any other way, therefore God, you have intrinsically deployed the assertion that life naturally existing is 1 in x, where x, according to your unfounded assertion, is some exponential number, ergo appears to be a miracle. You cannot avoid this with the fine-tuning argument, unless you act dishonestly about it. You have yet to show how you can, ergo, that burden is still on you. Demonstrate how you can claim that a life-permitting universe was unlikely or impossible without God without discussing mathematical probability. You failed to do it in your first video, you failed to do it in your responses since, and I'm still waiting for it.
But bro, this is the point, the frustration here is, and it's not just with him, but it's many others, is that they still want to try and win the argument. They still want to have the last say. And I'm thinking this tit for tat is immature. It's immature and it's ridiculous because how can you now have this sleight of hand and change what we actually intended and what we meant? Obviously, we said for you to contact us prior to your videos. Now, you may have, but most of the things you've shown on your video are just your video responses. That's not dialogue. That's misrepresenting us and then showing us that you've misrepresented us. But when we said contact us, email us, call us, discuss with us, it's to prevent that misrepresentation. Not from only yourself, but from ourselves as well.
I think that point's very clear.
Of course it is. Hopefully.
Hopefully it's very clear. Hopefully the penny's dropped for Peter and he finally understands, right? Before he puts a second part to the response, right?
Do note that not once have you actually shown me to have misrepresented you. You've asserted it, you've cried slander, you've whinged and moaned, but you have failed ultimately to display how I've claimed you have stated one thing, when in reality I always display you stating your own arguments yourselves. Meanwhile, your responses to me butchered my arguments against you in the initial videos, as my responses showed, utilizing evidence, something you fail to use in your video by not displaying what I have apparently said in misrepresenting you. On top of this, in your original video, you told me to come to you if I needed clarification on something. Do tell me how I'm supposed to know which of your videos are of such poor quality in that they fail to get your message across and which are not beforehand. I mean, if I demanded the same of you, you'd merely scoff. Hey, you should already be living by said rule, and yet not once did you contact me before lying about me, without displaying my arguments, and this is a claim I make with evidence. The same for Dr. Arif Ahmed, Justin L. Barrett, etc. Your demand is unreasonable. It expects me to be psychic and know when you yourselves have thoroughly messed up in a video you planned for, recorded, edited, reviewed, post-production, and then uploaded. If I point out your mistakes in your video, you should correct those mistakes in future videos or in the description, just as I do. Now we have come to the end of this segment and we see mostly the same rubbish being reasserted. Sadly, I will not drop my style of response, even if 1 or 2 people request I do so. It's better to be thorough and then be proven wrong, than to do a half-assed job and then be proven wrong. But of course, at the moment, I'm doing a thorough job and I'm currently the one with evidence. Also, for those claiming that I should simply stop as I'm being drugged down to their level and beaten by their experience, no such thing is occurring. They appear to be learning, as painfully slow as it may be. They've begun sharing their responses to me in a clear fashion, as well as including my footage. That, if nothing else, is a step forward. Then the lengths they are taking to shut off their subscribers from the effect of my videos is immense. They are panicking. See, they've caught on to the realization that we are not the only people here. Though Hamza begs me to come to Islam, this is merely an act designed to play at his viewers' heartstrings. I, meanwhile, am not demanding he leave Islam, merely that he utilizes better arguments, more honest techniques, and better evidence. What effect that would have on his beliefs remains to be seen. Now, this is of course the first part, but the second video, as I did the midsection first, I will be going into the last section in the next video. So with that stated, thank you and take care.